In the 1980s, a janitor worked at the California Frito-Lay plant by the name of Richard Montanez. All the janitorial work and cleaning was up to him. If you don't know much about Frito-Lay, let me explain what it is. Right now, it's owned by Pepsi, and they create plenty of different chips, one of the most famous chips brands in the world, and the most famous one are Cheetos. Richard has written in his memoir that every time he went to the store and was confronted with Frito-Lay products, he would never buy it because they tasted bland and it wasn't worth buying, and he writes that it lacked spices. It is good to know that Richard Montanez is a Mexican American, so his culture and food style is much different than an American, especially in terms of spices. One day Montanez realizes that he should buy one of these Cheetos and modify it to his own taste buds and make it taste better. He took it home and with the help of other types of spices, he made it a tiny bit spicy. He didn't know, but by doing this, he had invented one of the most famous chips in America or even the world, hot Cheetos. When Richard realized that it actually tastes good, he thought to himself that everyone else must like this type of chips, so that is why he tries to contact the CEO of Frito-Lay, a man by the name of Roger Enrico. After contacting a bunch of employees and contacting other people, he finally got through and started speaking with Enrico. Montanez tells the CEO that I have created a spicy type of Cheetos and I'm sure you will like it. Roger says, I'm not there right now, I will be in California in 2 weeks, you can show us then. Montanez wasn't very good at reading and writing, so he couldn't prepare a professional speech. What he did with the help of his wife is create 100 little baggies of hot Cheetos to give other executives and the CEO himself to try out. Not only did other employees love it, but most of the executives of Frito-Lay fell in love with it, and they were already speaking about how we should produce this thing. Before Hot Cheetos, Frito-Lay didn't have any spicy chips, and they realized on that day that they're missing out on a huge part of the market. They can be the first American company to produce hot chips. After this invention is created and they start selling it, Richard Montanez goes to school, gets his degree up, and becomes one of the executives at Frito-Lay. It was a very cool story. But hold on, let me tell you another story. In the year 2017, a lady by the name of Lynn Greenfield is confronted with an article online. An article that said how a janitor invented hot Cheetos. The least you could say is Greenfield was shocked. He said, how is it possible? I was the one that gave the idea for hot Cheetos. Who is Montanez? She immediately calls the legal department of Frito-Lay and asks them what has taken place. After a few days, Lynn Greenfield complained to the legal department. Frito-Lay company contacted the LA Times and told them this. In our records, there is no place that says Richard Montanez is the inventor of hot Cheetos, and we don't know where the story came from. Richard has written in his memoir that he thought about this idea in the 1980s, but Frito-Lay company has nothing about him. But the weird thing is, hot Cheetos wasn't even invented in California, but it was in Chicago and Detroit. In the 1980s, in the area of Chicago and Detroit, it was becoming very popular to sell spicy chips. And the branch of Frito-Lay in that area realized that there is a huge market for spicy chips, so they started developing something like that. One of the main people that worked on the Hot Cheetos project at Frito-Lay in Chicago was this lady, Lynn Greenfield. Montanez's story started to get fishy because he exclusively said that he went in front of all the executives of Frito-Lay and showed them this spicy chips, and all of them tested it. So maybe the executives that tested it could help Montanez out. Journalists and newspapers around America got very sensitive and they wanted to figure everything out because it was a hot topic. Anywhere a Frito-Lay executive would go, you could see journalists chasing them and asking them a bunch of questions, especially about hot Cheetos and Richard Montanez. Is he the inventor of hot Cheetos? Usually the executives would always seem clueless and they didn't know Richard Montanez. And some executives would even say that if such story existed, we would for sure know about it. The more you move forward, the story of Montañez gets fishier and weirder. In the beginning, we said to introduce the idea of hot Cheetos, Montañez contacted the CEO of Frito-Lay, a man named Roger Enrico. But the weird thing is, Enrico became the CEO of Frito-Lay in the middle of 1991, 6 months after hot Cheetos hit the shelves, and they were already very popular. And that means Roger Enrico had nothing to do with this project. The memoir of Richard Montañez is actually very popular and you could buy it today. And in this book, Enrico's name is mentioned 60 times on how he helped him invent hot Cheetos and hit the market with it. But the dates do not match up whatsoever. While all this is happening, there's a lot of investigations by journalists, and they're not letting go. They want to know everything. After looking into Montañez a lot more, they realized that he wasn't even a janitor. It's not like he didn't know how to read and write like his memoir. He worked in the sales department at Frito-Lay, but in this story, he makes himself look like a janitor. The more they look into this, the more information is coming out of him. And they slowly realize, even though Montañez is not telling the truth, but not everything he's saying is a lie. He worked in the sales department for the Hispanic community. Like if you go to the Mexican stores or other stores in a Mexican neighborhood, you will find a type of Frito-Lay named Sabritas, which is meant for the Hispanic community, and they're usually spicy chipses. Richard Montañez was one of the main people that worked on this project and made it possible. So he was a very important man in the project of Sabritas and spicy chips in the Hispanic community. You could say he was a professional businessman and salesman, and he knew how to make a product sell. So when he's getting near his retirement, he started making up stories about how as a janitor he invented hot Cheetos. You could tell his plan was to give this story out there. It would blow up, and he had his book ready to publish so the public would all purchase it and read it, and that would make him a ton of money. You could still buy his book everywhere, especially on Amazon. If you search Richard Montañez Flamin' Hot, you can find his book. You could tell that even Richard Montañez's story helped Frito-Lay company, and it sold more hot Cheetos because it brought a lot of attention to that chips. And that's one of the reasons that the Frito-Lay executives don't even talk about it. And you could say this is why they call this a huge scam by the Frito-Lay company. But the funny part is that Montañez does not let go. He still says he's the inventor of hot Cheetos as a janitor. And Lynn Greenfield on the other side says, no, I was the main person on the project and I made it. And while all this is happening, the Frito-Lay company is watching from afar and eating popcorn and enjoying the show, because all this talking brings a lot of attention to hot Cheetos.